Maan is a 28-year-old auto repair mechanic from Moga, Punjab. Now, for most of his life, he's dealt with money problems. He's from a small farming family and never attended college. So he knew that a high-paying job was never really an option for him. Neither was farming because it was just too unpredictable.
He was making about 12 to 15,000 every month, so things were tough. But then in 2023, an opportunity came his way that changed his life. A friend of his introduced him to a Telegram group. His friend told him that every couple of weeks, the admin would share the download link of a particular app. He made it sound pretty kosher. Just a quick and easy way to make an extra buck or two. So, Maan joined the group.
He told him that all you need to do is, wait for the next instruction, as in the next download link of one of these apps. And he got registered on that Telegram app. He got that download link. He downloaded the link, put in his UPI ID, bank details. And they told him that then starting tomorrow, you'll start receiving some funds. All you need to do is, here is the next bank account's number, next bank account's UPI ID. All you need to do is transfer this money onto that bank account as soon as you receive it. In fact, he was given a deadline of 15 minutes as well. So within 15 minutes, he was supposed to transfer the money from his account to the next. And for that, he will be able to get a cut of about 4 to 5%.
That was the Ken reporter Rounak Kumar Gunjan. When he spoke to Maan last month, the mechanic told him that there was a little bit of niggling suspicion when the money started coming in, but he was just glad to have an extra source of income. And initially, it wasn't even a lot of money, a couple hundred rupees here and there, but it was enough to get him hooked. So Maan kept going.
Over time, more and more money started landing into Maan's account. And then one day,
his friend was called to an ICICI branch in Moga, and he was told that his account has been flagged for suspicious activity. Fortunately or unfortunately for the friend, there was not a lot of money in that account, so he let the bank close his account without much complaint. He came back and told his friend, told Maan about it, that his account got flagged and then they blacklisted it, etc. That's when Maan got really suspicious.
Now, Maan was always a little suspicious of the whole thing, but for the most part, he ignored it because of the money. But when his friend's account was blacklisted, he started to question whether this new side hustle of his was even legal. So he reached out to the friend who had actually brought him into the whole Telegram group.
and that is when he realized just how murky the whole business was. You see, without quite realizing it, Maan had become a money mule. Hello and welcome to another special episode of Daybreak. I'm Snigdha.
And I'm Rahel, and every Friday we come together to talk about something in business and tech that interests the both of us.
And it won't just be us. Depending on what we're talking about, we'll have some really interesting people joining us on the show.
Stay tuned.
So, Rounak, to begin with, can you tell us what exactly is a money mule?
So mules, or money mules as they are called, are people who lend their bank accounts to cybercriminals, usually unknowingly. And it helps in moving money from a victim's account by dodging the law enforcement agencies. In exchange, these people also get a small cut. So mule accounts are mostly used for phishing scams, online gambling, ransom payments for kidnapping, for instance, escort services. Wherever people cannot use legit bank accounts, legit forms of payments, mule accounts become helpful there.
The rather unfortunate part of all of this is that most people who unknowingly land up as money mules are a lot like Maan. They're usually from low-income groups who get intrigued by the prospect of making some easy money. But more often than not, they don't realize just how dangerous and, well, illegal it all is.
You see, mule accounts are the go-to for most illegal transactions. Mule service providers do not participate in the fraud directly. They simply deploy a small army of mules like Maan to move cash around. Each month, these channels funnel over 2,500 crore rupees in illicit funds. And most of this money is never recovered because the people running these rackets are experts at evading law enforcement, now more than ever before.
You see, the fraud machine is getting sleeker and busier than ever, not to mention more organized. So, to understand this whole phenomenon better, we spoke to Dheeraj Gupta. He's the co founder of M-Filterit, a 9-year-old company, and its whole raison d'etre or reason for being is finding fraud.
So, Dheeraj, you've been following these online scams for almost a decade now, and you have so much perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about how digital fraud has kind of evolved over the years and how it has become so sophisticated now with, new tech coming into the picture like AI?
I think the simple way to consider fraud these days is personalization. I think personalization has entered everywhere, including fraudsters. Fraudsters will not just try and commit fraud by just making a random statement. They actually try and personalize the way they will pitch to you to win your confidence and then do the fraud. Unfortunately, a lot of our data of our daily lives, our family, our friends is out there which these criminals can access and then prepare for. And obviously the AI tools are making it much more easier for them to spoof their voice, to spoof their video or their image, which allows these scams to let's say get democratized, right? So it's no longer really high tech equipment which is very expensive, and then you have people like Tom Cruise doing it in Mission Impossible, but even people like you and me can actually do this. And the other variable which has ended up coming in place is crypto. Typically, in any investigation, the investigative authorities had two angles, right? Either reach out, try and find the person who did it, or try and follow the money as to where the money went, right? And both of them could lead you to the fraud, the mastermind. Now, one of that variable is now gone for a toss because the moment the money gets moved from the banking channels into crypto, it's become anonymized, which means that now investigative agencies have lost one good way of tracking the proceeds of the crime, which has made this more difficult to track.
And on top of all of this is the layer of mules who mainly use Telegram for their illegal activities. And it's Telegram because we all know it is anonymized. Your phone number also will not be displayed. We love it for privacy reasons, of course, but obviously it works out perfectly also for fraudsters. They can just use a fake name and talk to you.
So, Dheeraj, we were actually wondering because you track all these channels for work. Do you think you could open your phone right now and kind of give us a little bit of a BTS of what these groups look like? I'm just curious to know, the kind of messages that are being sent on these channels.
So, so very briefly, right? So, for example, if I, okay, so if I search for escorts, okay, so you get this group, for example, Delhi, Pune, Mumbai escort services, right? Now, and you actually just message on it saying, "Hi, I'm interested," right? And you suddenly get a menu option, right? And you will get payment options and so on. Nothing else to be done, right? And as I said, if you just say, okay, I want to pay, they will send you a QR code, right? And that QR code is going to be of a mule. So it's obviously a illegal activity. The same, just replace escort services with drugs, and you have the same thing happening, right? If you take the QR code and you report it to the police, right? Because there's no phone number, you can't report the phone number. The Telegram group is anonymized. But if you take the QR code and you give it to the police, actually, again, that mule comes in. So that's how these services are running. And they may be running on Telegram, they might be running on dark web, they might be running in multiple places, but the modus operandi is practically the same.
But Dheeraj, it's not just people looking for illegal things like gambling, drugs, escort services, right? Like a lot of normal people also kind of fall prey to these fraudsters, right?
Yeah, so there are a lot of college kids, a lot of regular people who are accessing Telegram is a popular app for a lot of people, right? And so and there's obviously a lot of legitimate or normal chats which happen on Telegram, right? It's a fairly popular application. So absolutely, there's a lot of these things which are happening. I'll in fact go towards investment scams. If you search on these Telegram groups and you search for, investment advice, you'll find a plethora of channels. In fact, SEBI has come out with a lot of these channels and flagged them that, they're providing wrong information, fake information for investors. So typically on these, you will get, suppose you go and say, I want to invest, right? Suddenly people will reach out and say, I'll double your money in 6 hours, right? Imagine how beautiful that is. In 6 hours, your money gets doubled. I should stop working if that could happen. But the problem is that these are all, first of all, completely illegal. They're not registered SEBI advisors for sure. But what they're also going to do is that they're not actually going to give you advice that say, buy Tata Steel or buy this share, right? They're not doing that. What they're going to say is, okay, here's my payment QR code, transfer 30,000 rupees, and I will invest on your behalf, right? And the moment you do that, you're basically become party to an investment scam. There's going to be a big butchering which is going to happen. For layman, it basically means is that the fraudster is not going to run away with the money. He's actually going to show that in 6 hours you actually doubled your money. Through screenshots, he's going to say, look, your money is doubled. Now he's going to say, put 30,000 more, put 50,000 more. You get excited, you put more money. That also doubles or triples. You put more money. So that's called pig butchering. And finally, when you've invested a few lakhs, and you say, okay, now I need to recover this money, that guy will ghost you and disappear, right?
Okay, on that note, Dheeraj, if you could explain to us the role that M-Filter it kind of plays in this whole cyber fraud landscape.
So we at Infiltrate we have a core skill set of crawling and finding dark and deep corners of the internet to pull information out, make sense out of it, connect it together, and provide that in a meaningful way. So what we do is that we go into these platforms, whether it's Telegram groups or it's emailers or it's Insta groups or it's YouTube Shorts or just websites, apps, chatting groups. We find out where these activities are happening. We bait these people to share their details, right? So we actually bait them to share their QR code, their bank details, etc. And then we take that and we report that to the banking industry, right? Now, of course, these are mules, right? So the mastermind might still be hidden, but now those mules have got exposed, which is the first layer of which gets unraveled, and the effort for these fraudsters to keep finding new mules keeps increasing. So every day we are tracking thousands of mules with full proof points and screenshots, which are provided to regulatory bodies and banking authorities.
Right. Also, Dheeraj, you were talking to Ronak about, how you've noticed this very concerning trend in this entire fraud machinery, of how fraudsters are now running what looks a lot like a B2B operation, actually. And the new buzzword that we're hearing a lot, which also Ronak mentioned in his story, is Mule-as-a-service, or MaaS. So can you help us understand what exactly it is?
What it means is that someone manages all the mules and rotates them. What that means is that a fraudster will not use only one mule at any given time. His money is actually segregated maybe over 500 mule accounts, right? Which means that as a payment gateway, that unofficial or unauthorized payment gateway or mule-as-a-service payment gateway, I can keep rotating it to bypass those thresholds which say transaction analysis is meeting, right? Because I can keep saying, okay, I will allow this much money to go into, say, your account, a mule account A, then wait for, say, 15 minutes, because that's what RBI's guide, thumb rule is. And then after 15 minutes, take another set of money, then again sleep for 30 minutes, then put another set of money, not, and so on and so forth. Now, practically by doing this, I'm able to manage the patterns which is being used to catch me, which means that you might think that mules have reduced, but actually, and you've taken action and you've protected, but actually just that fraudsters have changed the patterns by which they're doing the fraud, right?
Dmart is synonymous with discounts. Its stores are packed on most weekends like there is a festival going on. But despite all of this, the listed company has been in a bit of a slumber for some time now. So, my colleagues Rohin Dharmakumar and Praveen Gopalakrishnan decided to investigate the forces that are making Dmart take a pause and decide what its strategy is to defend its position. Stay tuned to hear what they and their really interesting guests had to say at the end of this episode. And now back to Daybreak.
If you ask an RBI official or pretty much any bank employee about the whole Mule network scenario, they'll tell you that it has gotten way out of hand. In fact, 4 banking executives Rounak spoke to said the topic has come up in nearly every closed-door meeting this year. Both regulators and industry players are all desperately trying to find a solution, but so far, progress has been slow.
Sadly, only 10% of the money is being able to be recovered till now. So about 2,500 crore a month is being used by these mule accounts, and they're evading the system completely. And out of that, only about 250 to 300 crore is able to be recovered.
Right. Ronak, it kind of sounds like for banks and actually even for the RBI, it's almost like a never-ending game of playing catch-up, no? Like, especially because these digital fraudsters, they've become so evolved and sophisticated with the kind of online scams that they're pulling off.
Presently, it is a game of catch-up, to be honest, because banks or the RBI do not have a definitive solution as to how to stop this kind of fraud. So there are only 2 kinds of solutions. We are able to be either predictive or preventive. For instance, the Innovation Hub of RBI has come up with a mule tracker, an AI/ML-based mule tracker. So what these guys do is they make their systems or their models read huge amounts of transactional data so that in real time they're able to sort of predict which account is moving towards a suspicious activity. For instance, if account A was dormant for about a year, a couple of years, and then suddenly there's a lot of activity in it, then the mule tracker will probably tell us that there is something suspicious going on. But that's completely predictive. There may not be something suspicious going on. So that's one. Second, the kind of model that companies like mFilter use. So what they do is they use web crawlers. So that's sort of preventive. But in real time, when there is a scam going on, when there is money being dissipated, when there is, for instance, a mule being hired and brought into the system, for all of those things, we still don't have a solution. So you're right, banks are playing catch up, but they're trying to get as innovative as possible and, trying to close in. But there is still a long way to go.
You see, law enforcement authorities in India are working overtime to track down these mule accounts. In fact, they look at it sort of like a multi-level deception scheme, a pyramid with multiple tiers of recruits, all of whom are at different levels based on how much money is involved. Rounak explains how it works and where MaaS fits into the pyramid.
The lowest rung of people are usually called L3, and they are people like MaaS who don't have much technical skills and are new to the system. L3s are usually inducted through referrals from L2s. Now, L2s are one step above L3s. They're more experienced mules who've been in the system for a while and are trusted with larger amounts of money to move. The top of the pyramid is occupied by L1s. These guys are technically skilled folks who move the money from the victim's account to the eventual source, either by converting it into cryptos or through hawalas, etc. The referral system is incentive based, so fresh L3s keep coming. Fresh L3s like MaaS keep joining the system, and the money keeps moving from the victim's account to L3, then to L2, then L1, and then out of the system.
The biggest use case for these mule accounts has been online gambling, which, by the way, is banned in India. In fact, just earlier this year, the Indian government banned nearly 200 betting sites. But every time a site is banned, a new one pops up in its place. It's kind of like the proxy sites that would pop up for websites streaming pirated movies.
It's almost a feasting ground for these money mules, because every time you go to make a payment for, say, for gambling on a website X, you will find different names of UPI IDs being mentioned there, because I'm sure you're aware that and a UPI ID can only receive a certain number of transactions in a day, a certain amount of money. There is a ceiling to it as well. So you cannot have one UPI ID receiving money throughout the day on a gambling app. So they keep rotating these UPI IDs as well. And the amount of interest that people have in online gambling in India is crazy, which is why if you go to a famous online gambling website, say 1x, you will constantly find that every half an hour the UPI ID that's getting displayed on the payments page keeps changing. So from that we can understand the amount of involvement, the amount of interest that people have, which is why they're having to rotate those UPI IDs every 30 minutes.
The reason these sites rotate UPI IDs so frequently is to dodge regulatory flags. Obviously, you see the NPCI caps daily UPI transfers at 1 lakh rupees per ID. So, through these mule networks, these illegal sites are able to move huge amounts of money all while staying under the radar.
And while folks like Dheeraj have been able to identify many patterns of how these mule networks operate, these networks constantly change their modus operandi, and they do it so fast that it is almost impossible to catch them just based on their operating patterns. So, what does an expert like Dheeraj do?
By our solution, which is going to the source of where the mules are, you can keep getting these additional data points because we are sure that it's a mule. Now, if that mule account has a different pattern, now that can actually help you in training back the model, saying that now, by the way, you can't use 95% as a threshold, you have to use 80% or 85% because that 95% no longer is there. So this data helps you in training and predicting and improving the accuracy of all your other analytics. So the modus operandi of these criminals will keep changing, but the backbone requirements remain the same. They need a hook to justify, they need a money flow, they need some mules to collect the money, then they will route it and then convert to crypto, right? That doesn't change. It might be kidnapping, it might be drugs, it might be money laundering, it might be digital arrest, it might be investment scams, but this part remains the same. And if we can action on this part, we can actually reduce the effort of every fraudster, increase the effort of every fraudster into doing that fraud, which in itself should reduce the implication of this.
It sounds a lot like a never ending cat and mouse chase. You see, as these mule networks get smarter, regulators and startups like mFilter will have to keep up. Because right now, the fraud economy is booming, and just playing catch up isn't going to cut it anymore. Like Dheeraj said, they have to find the source and stop it right there.
About whether or not they launched Dmart Ready to defend their existing business, right? We need to understand when I think Dmart Ready was launched in 2017, 2018, but it was more of a pilot.
Before COVID.
But it gathered steam during the pandemic. Right?
They were still doing pilots.
By then, Big Basket had been operational for 8 years? Right? And Big Basket is also a value retailer, e-tailer.
Yes.
You get really good discounts on Big Basket because at that point it was only next day delivery.
Correct.
Right? So you could wait for a day and get a 20%, 30% discount, in your overall basket. So Big Basket was already there, and JioMart launched in April or May 2020. And that's when Dmart started to take this business seriously. So it's not that customers didn't have, and JioMart was free delivery, regardless of the order value, right? So Dmart Ready was not the first to do this. So they were clearly trying to protect their customers from being poached. And it hasn't worked. At that point, it did seem counterintuitive. Like Rohan said, Blinkit and Zepto, they've shown that you can indeed get customers to pay for delivery. At that point, everyone was doing free delivery, and Dmart said, sorry, it was 50 to 80 bucks then.
Yes.
Right? But now you're telling me to come to your store and pick up, not even a store, it's a kiosk.
Absolutely.
Right? And your CEO is talking about how they want to move everything to same day delivery when refrigerators and TVs are being delivered in 15 minutes and 20 minutes.
Okay, that's an exaggeration. We haven't reached there yet. We probably will.
No, you can get, I just checked Big Basket. You can get a microwave oven in 10 minutes. From
Big Basket is delivering.
Yeah, from Chroma.
So Big Basket, just to tell you, last 3 deliveries that I got from them were 6 hours delayed. And they were booked for a 24-hour slot. Not even quick commerce. So Big Bazaar, it is just not reaching. The big basket is, I think, far away. And if you look at what valuation they got when they sold to Tata, is actually a clear proof as well, as to, so the Blinkits, etc., are getting far, far superior valuation, in my opinion, vis-a-vis what their business model is and what their profitability can be. I don't think they can ever meet the profitability that Dmart is delivering.
But
that's the nub of the argument, right? Because
Yes.
the game that we've been or at least Dmart and legacy retailers have been playing is that, hey, the only thing that matters is profits. You're a business, you exist to make profits, and investors and markets will look at how fast you're growing and how much profits you're generating, and they'll value you based on that. In comes this quick commerce trend where suddenly that's no longer the objective and it's valuations, right?
Yes.
So now,
Yes.
the choice that is, I can imagine Dmart is faced with is that is this a passing storm? Like, can we just hope and close our eyes and hope that in 3 years or 4 years, most of this will burn away because everyone will realize? But if you do that, how much of your business do you have to sacrifice in the short term because of these VC-funded giants, which, many of them are now, Zomato is listed, Swiggy is listed, will continue to, or one is backed by Tata, will continue to chop away or take away your, customers. And so you lose on valuation. So, I was just thinking, there's a very famous saying, right? In the context of stock markets, that markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent, right? So in some senses, this is like the large company retailer version of it, right?
Yeah.
That, venture funded valuation bubbles can remain inflated longer than you can hope to run a sustainable and profitable business. And therefore, what does it do?
So I think pre-quick commerce, I think the choices were very clear. They were binary for Dmart, right? Just focus on brick and mortar retail, make a lot of money, or do e-commerce and lose money, because that was no retailer was profitable then. Amazon, Flipkart, they still aren't. And Big Basket, which was the one big grocery-only retailer, Big Basket wasn't making money either. But now you can't make the same argument because Blinkit is on the verge of breaking even. And Instamart, Swiggy will also break even in a few quarters, right? I don't know about Zepto. So, and this is partly because they are charging customers $30, $15, $30, right? So you can no longer make that argument to analysts and investors. We won't do this because we are a very frugal company. We want to make money, right? You can't say that anymore. But it's not in your DNA to do quick commerce the way we understand quick commerce.
You just listened to was a small part of the discussion that Rohin and Praveen had on the Ken's premium podcast 2x2, which was also handpicked as one of their favorite podcasts of the year by Apple Podcasts. You can listen to the full episode with a premium subscription to the Ken, or on Apple Podcasts with a standalone subscription to just 2x2. And if you're still not ready to take the leap yet, you will find a shorter version of the podcast on any podcast platform. Just look for 2x2 wherever you get your podcasts, Apple or Spotify. Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of the Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings.
A full subscription unlocks daily long-form feature stories, newsletters, and podcast extras. Head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the Ken website.
Today's episode was hosted and produced by Rahel Philippos and I, Snigdha Sharma, and it was edited by Rajiv CN.